Welcome. I'm Dr. Jessica Ilani, and this is our American Headache Society Leadership Development Series. I'm here with Dr. Kathleen Digre and Dr. Richard Lipton, both former presidents of the American Headache Society. It is my complete honor to have you both here with me today, and we're going to talk about your pathway to presidency. So I wanted to first ask you both, at what point did you decide that you wanted to be the American Headache Society president? Or did someone decide that for you? And how did that go? Kathleen, why don't you start?
All right. Well, I did not decide to become the president.
I had a feeling that was the case, Kathleen.
You know, I am a person who does the work, gets it done, and so Dave Dodick came to me and said, I'd like to nominate you as secretary of the American Headache Society. And I went, what? That means I'm on a pathway to be the president? Yes, he said. I said, well, what if I screw up before I get there? And he said, you won't screw up. And then I had to ask myself, do I have the time? And do I want to do it? And I said, you know, I really love the American Headache Society, and yes, I want to do it. But it wasn't because I wanted to be famous or anything else. It was that I felt like I could be a good leader, and I had some ideas of what I wanted to accomplish when I was president, and so that's how it happened.
Richard, what about you? How did it go for you?
Yeah, so I definitely never had being AHS president as an ambition. My mentor in headache medicine is a gentleman named Seymour Solomon, who was himself a former AHS president. And when I was coming up in headache medicine, Cy was AHS president, and he tried to nominate me for the board, and we were told, no, we can't have two people from one center. And then when the opportunity arose for me to run for a board position, I was very happy to do it. My interest grew a lot from the epidemiology studies I was doing very early in my career, because those studies showed, first, the great extent to which migraine was underdiagnosed and undertreated, and second, the critical role that primary care doctors play as really the major providers for people living with headache disorders. And that made me want to extend AHS's reach well beyond neurology into primary care. And so my wish was motivated by a wish to engage the clinical community most involved in headache treatment in learning about and aspiring to treat headache better.
So both of you were highly motivated individuals in the field who were identified as future leaders by past presidents to kind of get pulled into.
That's exactly right.
Becoming board members. When you were kind of motivated individuals, were there activities you were doing along the way to really get involved on the executive board? Were you part of committees? Did someone ask you to sit on these committees? Were you being mentored before even getting onto the board before that?
So my journey was Dr. Daroff, Bob Daroff, who was also a past president, nominated me to be the chair of the publications committee. So I was the publications chair for at least 2 editors and 2 negotiations of contracts. And I must have done an okay job, because then they invited me to be to run as to be a board member first, and then I went further. But I think it was really being the chair of this committee, which is really important for the American Headache Society, that gave me, you know, some recognition, probably from other people, and then I was asked to be on the board, and I was on the board for a couple years before Dr. Dodick asked if I could run for secretary.
Yeah. Richard?
Yeah, and for me, I was very involved early on in organizing educational activities. So I ran the Scottsdale Symposium for a bunch of years, then ran our annual June scientific meeting. I chaired the committees that put together a number of our courses, including, the chronic migraine education program and later the next generation program. So my early involvement was very much on the education side. And, honestly, as I entered that sort of escalator that leads to presidency, I was pretty anxious about taking on all that responsibility because I had lots of other responsibilities. But I have to say it was one of the most satisfying things I've ever done in my career. So I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity.
I think that, our members often ask things about being on the board of directors. This is a little bit off script, but I think this is an important thing for our future leaders to know about. I get asked a lot about how many hours a week does one work as a board member. And I do think it's important that we realize that board membership kind of comes, I think of it as in two flavors. There's board at large, where you're a member at large. And then there's the executive board, which, as Kathleen mentioned, you start as secretary, and then you can get voted in as treasurer, and then as president-elect and as president. And unless you really screw up, which I have been told can happen, you are on that path to becoming president of American Headache Society. So, a member at large, and Richard, if you want to take this first, and Kathleen, in general, is this something that takes many, many hours per week in an individual's time, if that's all they're doing and they're not involved in other committee work?
Yeah, so being a member at large is not a tremendous time commitment, but I do think most members at large end up doing other things as board members, and I do think, there are many advantages to being on the board. It provides opportunities to speak at headache meetings. It definitely increases your profile in the field, and those are very good things. But most board members end up working with SIGs, working with committees, working on the Constitution, working on teaching courses, and then it can be more time consuming. I think, the American Headache Society mission is something like improving the lives of people living with headache diseases or disorders. And I think the reason to be a board member is because you want to support that mission. Yeah. And my impression of most of the board members is that they're really there to improve the lives of their patients and teach their fellow clinicians how to help their patients improve their lives.
And I would just say some board members don't do that much. Yes. And then some board members do a lot more.
Yes.
And successful board members are going to be ones that do a little bit extra. If they're asked to do an assignment, they get the assignment done and willingly do it. And then ones that, so it does take time. But I agree with you, Richard. It's totally, you want to advance knowledge and you want to participate in making better treatments and decisions for our patients. Absolutely.
It's something similar to what I often tell my fellows and residents about teaching. One teaches because it's a passion. It's something you must do because you will not sleep at night if you don't teach. It's not a must do because it's something I need to check a box off. And I feel like being on the board is something similar. It's not a must do because it'll make me famous. It's good for my CV. It's a must do because I can't sleep at night because I need to do better for everyone else. And I think would satisfy you as a board member and satisfy the society because it's really about our membership. And when you're on the board, you're serving your membership. And I think that's a takeaway from my time on being on the board. And it's hard to sometimes express that when one is interested, but it is, as you said, Richard, one of the most satisfying experiences of my life is serving the membership and then being able to make changes that will then lead to improving the lives of those with headache disorders.
Yeah, so there's this concept that Erik Erikson, the developmental psychologist, developed, and the concept is generativity. And the idea of generativity is thinking about what you contribute to the world that might extend beyond the brief span that all of us get to spend here. And for me, it's very much about training the next generation of clinicians, training the next generation of researchers, and disseminating clinical and scientific insights to a broader community who use what they learn at AHS and elsewhere to make their patients' lives better.
So I wanted to ask both of you, were there certain experiences that you had or certain learnings you had from your work experience or life experience that really helped you develop your leadership skills along the way?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be president of another national organization before I was president of the American Headache Society.
I love that you got to practice on someone else first.
Yeah,
I just have to say
I
that.
practiced on somebody else first.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was the first woman president of that organization. Wow. But that did really help. Yeah. And I could see what the issues were. It was a much smaller organization than at that time than the American Headache Society was when I was president. So, but you could see where the issues are that you had to deal with membership, with other board members, with finances, et cetera. I mean, because it's a multifaceted position to be on the board. You have to really understand a little bit about finance, and then you have to understand education, clinical care, advocacy. I mean, it's just like there's all kinds of pieces to this job that you want to at least be aware of, and then, you're going to participate in it and also lead it.
Yeah. It's exciting, though, learning all those parts. It's definitely, I mean, I'm currently the treasurer. I'm not someone who feels always the most comfortable talking about money. I love to spend money, but to save money is frightening.
But you're going to be really good by the end of being the treasurer.
Yes, I've already been learning so much. Spreadsheets, graphs, talking money, talking about the economy, knowing how to forecast what's going to happen. And these are skill sets we're not taught in any other part of the journey. And to really be able to dive into that, to learn about that, and then to just feel more confident at the end of that time.
Yeah. The other thing I was fortunate enough to do was ELAM program, Executive Leadership in Academic Medicine, and that was really transformative because it really gave you a lot of background about, emotional intelligence, personality types, running meetings, working in teams, et cetera. So that was really also helpful.
Yeah. Richard, what about yourself?
Yeah, well, so for me, right out of fellowship, I became chief of neurology at one of our municipal hospitals. I ran a residency program. I then became chief of neurology at Montefiore, which is a big academic hospital. And in those roles, I learned a number of things. Like my colleagues, I learned a little something about budgeting and money, but I also learned something about the nature of academic leadership, which isn't based really on authority. It has to be based on persuasion. It has to be based on consensus building. It has to be based on reminding people of the goals we share and getting them to agree as to how we're going to move forward towards achieving those goals. And so those experiences were very helpful. And then just the steps of being on the executive escalator was helpful as well.
Yeah. So as we kind of come to an end of this conversation, if our future leaders are watching, what piece of advice would you give them if they want to go on the pathway to presidency? Richard?
Yeah, so I guess I would say if you have the ambition to be AHS president, I hope it's because you have a vision for the value you can deliver to the society and the membership through the presidency. The presidency should not be an end in itself. It should be a means towards achieving a goal, strengthening the society, strengthening some form of education, maybe helping the society promote research. And I think if you keep your eye on where you're trying to get and where you're trying to help the society get, that will serve you well.
And I would just say you have to get involved in the society and come to meetings and meet people and be engaged and volunteer and take leadership roles when you're offered. You know, if you get offered a position, you got to take it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it means that you've got other things that are on your plate at the moment and you can't. But I really think that getting involved is important. And I totally agree with you that this is not like the end goal. It's serving the society and helping us achieve the mission of the American Headache Society.
Well, I want to thank both of you for wonderful advice and sharing your journey, and I hope you all have enjoyed watching this video.